I was grilling burgers by the lake with my buddies when I spotted her Bridget Overton, president of the Willow Creek HOA and self-declared queen of the cul-de-sac, marching toward us in her usual high-waisted khakis and a face that could curdle milk. She was gripping her clipboard like it was a weapon. "Excuse me," she barked, pointing at my friends who were laughing and skipping rocks with my nephew across the water. "This is private lake access. Your guests need to leave immediately." I set down my spatula, took a breath, and turned around slowly. "Afternoon, Bridget." "I think you're confused," she curled her lip. "No, I'm not. The HOA bylaws clearly state that lake access is for residents only, no guests unless approved, and you didn't submit a guest use form." I couldn't help but let out a short laugh. "You're trying to tell me my guests can't be on my land," she squinted. "Lake access is common space. You know that. It belongs to the HOA. I stepped closer and pointed to the old iron marker at the edge of the tree line, a rusted but still legible sign that read, "Private Parcel Lot 17 not HOA maintained." Then I pointed to the map I had laminated and zip-tied to a post last year after Bridget had tried to claim the same thing. "This is Lot 17, Bridget. My lot, my lake access, this part of shoreline, not under your jurisdiction." She froze, blinking like someone had just unplugged her brain. "That can't be right. The lake is, well, it's part of the community." "Nope," I said, "not this stretch. My deed includes this sliver of shoreline. You can check with the county records again if you'd like. I already did. Twice." My buddy Phil, who had been casually sipping a beer, added, "And we're not even swimming. We're just standing on the grass watching ducks." "Is that illegal now?" Bridget's eyes darted from me to the group. You could see her trying to recalculate, but she wasn't giving up yet. "Well, you still need to notify the HOA if you plan to host gatherings. That's in the handbook. This isn't a gathering." "It's 4 people and some hot dogs," I said. "And the handbook doesn't apply to private property. You know that." Her mouth opened and closed. She looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't figure out how. Then, without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed back toward the trail, muttering something about calling a board meeting. Phil leaned over. "She's going to try something else, isn't she?" I nodded. "Oh yeah. That clipboard's the calm before the storm." 3 days after the lakeside incident, I got home from work to find a bright yellow notice zip-tied to my mailbox post. Bold red letters screamed, "Notice of violation." I didn't even make it to the front door before tearing it off. "Unapproved gathering on HOA managed property," it said. "Second infraction. $250 fine due within 10 days. I stared at the paper, then at my mailbox, then at the street. My driveway camera, which I'd installed after a string of mail tampering in the neighborhood months prior, had a perfect angle. I checked the feed on my phone. There she was, Bridget, wearing gardening gloves and a sun hat, fastening the notice like she was hanging a wreath. Inside, I tossed the paper on the counter and called Dale Whitman, our city's zoning officer. Dale and I had gone to high school together, and while we weren't exactly close, we'd crossed paths at a few town forums. When I explained what happened, Dale gave a low whistle. "They're issuing fines for activity on non-HOA property?" he asked. "Yup. And this is the second time they've tried to claim that lake strip as theirs." He sighed. "I'll dig into their filings. If they're formally listing that land as common area in their records, we've got a problem." The next morning, I stopped by the county recorder's office. The clerk, a soft-spoken guy named Jeremy, pulled up the subdivision plat maps and scanned the documents. When he found Lot 17, he tapped the screen. "Here, you're right. This portion of shoreline was explicitly excluded from common access during the original development filing in '86. It was deeded as part of your parcel." I leaned in. "Can I get a certified copy of that?" "Already printing it," he said. "Back home, I drafted a cease and desist letter, attaching the plat map, a copy of my deed, and still images from the security feed showing Bridget placing the notice. I sent it to her certified mail and left a copy in the HOA's drop box. Later that day, I got a knock at the door. It was Jason Mullins, one of the board members. He was younger than most of them, mid-30s, wore flannel even in the summer, and had the tired eyes of someone who regretted volunteering. He held up his hands before I could say anything. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I saw the letter, and the footage." "Look, I didn't sign off on that notice, neither did two other board members. Burgett filed it solo." I raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that against your own rules?" He nodded. "Any official fines have to be voted on." She bypassed the process. "So she forged board approval." He hesitated. "I can't say that outright, but yeah, if she submitted it as board sanctioned, that's misrepresentation." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "How often has this happened?" His gaze dropped. "More than I'm comfortable with." "She's been listing violations without quorum approval for months. We didn't realize until she started going after people who actually pushed back." "What's she after?" Jason exhaled slowly. "Control. She's trying to expand the HOA's authority. Even tried to get an amendment passed last year to absorb the lakefront lots as common space. It failed by 3 votes. That explained the renewed aggression. She was trying to enforce authority she didn't legally have, hoping no one would notice." "Can I talk to the rest of the board?" I asked. He nodded. "We're meeting tomorrow night. Birch Community Room, 7 o'clock. You should come." When I arrived, the room was half full. Most of the chairs were taken by faces I'd seen at block parties, yard sales, and dog walks. Burgett sat at the front, flanked by 2 board members, an older woman with a tight bun and a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Jason sat on the far end, flipping through a binder. Burgett's eyes narrowed when she saw me. "This is a board meeting," she said sharply. "Residents must request speaking time 72 hours in advance." I held up my folder. "Then I guess I'll just sit quietly and pass this around." Jason reached for it. "I'll allow it. It's relevant to our agenda, property disputes." She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. As Jason flipped through the documents, I turned and addressed the room. "Some of you know me. For those who don't, I'm the owner of Lot 17, the property with the lake strip that the HOA keeps claiming as common space. That land was excluded from the HOA in the original filings. It's private. I've got the plat maps, deeds, and county certifications to prove it." Burgett's voice cut across the room. "That's not the issue. The issue is that you brought guests onto land that borders public access, and that creates liability for the community." "No," I said. "The issue is you delivered a fabricated violation notice without board approval to penalize activity on private land. That's unlawful. And you represented it as an official board action." Jason cleared his throat. "I've reviewed the documents. He's right. This isn't HOA property. We have no jurisdiction." Someone in the back raised a hand. "Wait. Does that mean we've been fined before for things that weren't even under HOA control?" A murmur rippled through the room. Burgett's face tightened. "This is all a misunderstanding." "No," I said. "It's a pattern. I've spoken with the zoning office. They're reviewing whether the HOA has misfiled jurisdictional maps. If that's the case, and fines were issued under false claims, there could be legal consequences." Another board member leaned forward. "Are you implying fraud?" "I'm saying if someone forged board consensus and penalized residents under false pretenses, that's not a clerical error. That's deliberate." Jason stood. "I move we suspend all enforcement actions tied to disputed property lines until we complete an internal audit." The vote passed unanimously except for Burgett, who sat frozen, her knuckles white against the table. The next morning, I got a call from Dale. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "We cross-referenced the HOA's filings. Turns out they submitted an updated plat map 2 years ago that quietly redrew boundaries without proper approval." My stomach dropped. "That's illegal." "Yup, and we've got signatures." "Whose?" "Burgett's. And a notary who's already admitted she never witnessed the signing." Within 48 hours, the city had pulled the HOA's ability to issue new fines. A formal investigation was opened. Residents began demanding public meetings. Jason resigned from the board only to announce he was running for HOA president to clean house. And people were listening. Bridget. She stopped showing up at meetings entirely. I didn't see her again until the county investigator knocked on her door with a summons. I was out walking my dog when it happened. She opened the door, took one look at the badge, and her knees buckled. Funny thing, she never did retrieve that yellow notice from my mailbox. I framed it. It hangs in my garage, right next to the laminated plat map. Bridget's porch lights stayed off for a week. Her flower beds, usually trimmed to within an inch of their lives, browned at the edges. Someone from the next street over said they saw her husband lugging trash bags into their SUV at dawn, avoiding eye contact with everyone. No one had seen her at the market, church, or even the Tuesday morning walking group she used to lead like a drill sergeant. But the fallout was just starting. 2 days after the summons was delivered, I got a knock at my door. It wasn't a neighbor, it was Detective Rivas from the County Financial Crimes Division. A tall woman in a charcoal blazer, clipboard tucked under one arm, she introduced herself and asked if I'd be willing to provide a formal statement. I invited her in. She examined the framed violation notice on my garage wall, the one Bridget had stuck to my mailbox. You said this was issued without board approval? Correct. One board member confirmed it. 2 others corroborated. She nodded once and jotted something down. We have reason to believe this wasn't an isolated incident. We're reviewing HOA financial records now, but there are some serious inconsistencies in their annual reports. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? Disbursements for landscape services that don't match any known vendor. Thousands allocated to legal consultations that weren't billed by licensed attorneys, and most concerning fund transfers into what appears to be a personal account under a shell business. Let me guess, I said. Bridget. We're verifying the details, she replied. But the account is registered to a limited liability company, and the registered agent is her nephew. The next week was a whirlwind. The county subpoenaed the HOA's bank statements. A forensic accountant was brought in. Residents were notified that monthly dues were being frozen, and an emergency oversight panel was installed to halt any further spending. City Council even held a special session to address the growing number of complaints related to rogue HOAs across the district. That's when things escalated. Jason, now officially a candidate for HOA president, invited me to join a transparency committee. We met in his garage with 3 other homeowners, all of whom had been fined or threatened under questionable pretenses. One of them, a retired postal inspector named Linda, brought a binder thicker than my arm. These are all the notices I've kept since 2019, she said, flipping through color-coded tabs. Bridget's name is on every single one. Even on things that were supposed to be handled by the Architectural Review Board. I leaned over. What's this section? Petty cash reimbursements, she said. Over $8,000 in 3 years. Claimed for things like meeting refreshments and document printing, but board meetings don't even serve drinks, and the community printer's toner hasn't been replaced in over a year. Jason ran a hand through his hair. We need to put this on the record, all of it. We did. The following Monday, we submitted the binder to the county investigator, along with signed affidavits. By then, the story had hit local news. A reporter from Channel 9 showed up outside the Willow Creek sign, interviewing neighbors in front of trimmed hedges and quiet sidewalks. Bridget's name was never mentioned directly, but everyone knew who the former HOA officer under investigation was. That evening, a police cruiser idled outside her house for over an hour. The next day, I received another visitor this time, a man in a gray suit with a Department of Real Estate badge on his lapel. He introduced himself as Marcus Dyer, an investigator specializing in HOA fraud. I'm asking residents to provide any documents or communications that show the HOA exceeded its legal authority, he said. We're building a case under civil statute and possibly criminal fraud. I handed him the USB drive I'd prepared the night before. It contained everything: security footage, emails from Burgett with her insistence that the lake access was community-owned, and a scanned copy of the forged plat map. He examined the screen captures carefully. "This signature here, did you witness her file this with the city?" "No, but the clerk at the recorder's office confirmed she submitted it alone." He nodded. "That lines up with what we've heard. She may have used a falsified notary stamp, which opens her up to a felony charge." That night, a neighbor texted me a photo. Burgett's house was swarming with plainclothes officers. Boxes were being loaded into unmarked vehicles. Her husband stood on the porch, arms folded, while two officers carried a desktop tower wrapped in plastic out to the curb. The caption under the photo read, "Guess the Queen's castle just got stormed." The next morning, a formal announcement was posted on the community bulletin board. Effective immediately, Burgett Overton has resigned from all HOA duties. The board is under interim management pending a full election. Residents are advised to attend the upcoming accountability forum at the community center. The bulletin was signed by the city-appointed trustee. At the forum, the room was packed. Folding chairs lined every wall. For the first time in Willow Creek's history, the meeting wasn't led by someone with a clipboard. Instead, the trustee introduced three speakers: a councilwoman, a consumer protection lawyer, and an auditor from the Department of Real Estate. The lawyer stepped up first. "What happened here isn't just a failure of oversight," she said. "It was a deliberate attempt to expand authority through fraudulent filings, financial misreporting, and coercive enforcement. We are pursuing both restitution and criminal charges." Then came the auditor. "We've identified over 30 fabricated violation notices," he said. "The fines collected total more than $20,000. None of those funds were reported to the HOA's annual budget." The room fell into stunned silence. One neighbor, a soft-spoken man in a denim jacket, raised his hand. "Can the residents get that money back?" The lawyer nodded. "We're working on a restitution fund. If you were improperly fined, you'll receive a notice. You'll also be eligible to join the civil suit." After the forum, I stepped outside into the cool night air. Jason caught up with me. "You ever think it'd go this far?" he asked. "I thought she'd back off after getting called out," I said. "Didn't expect the whole HOA to be built on fraud." He shook his head. "She fooled everyone, but not for much longer." 2 weeks later, charges were filed: wire fraud, forgery, and unlawful disbursement of HOA funds. The court date was set for fall, and already the local paper was publishing editorials about HOA reform. Meanwhile, the lakefront grass was greener than ever. Kids chased frogs by the reeds. My nephew taught his friends how to skip rocks without hitting ducks. And not a single clipboard had been seen near my mailbox since. The neighborhood had changed. Not just because Burgett was gone, but because people had started asking questions. They stopped assuming the HOA was untouchable. They started reading the bylaws, attending meetings, and demanding transparency. And in the end, that was the real victory. The land was mine. But the community? We took that back together. The court date arrived on a crisp October morning. The kind where the air carries a bite, but the sun makes everything feel like it's on the brink of thawing. I parked near the county courthouse, glanced at the clock, and walked through the double doors flanked by security officers. Inside, the hallway buzzed with low murmurs: neighbors, reporters, a few city officials, even a real estate attorney I vaguely recognized from a zoning panel the year before. Jason was already seated in the gallery, flipping through a thick folder of documents. He looked up as I slid into the bench beside him. "You see the witness list?" he asked without looking up again. I nodded. 3 former board members, 2 residents, and the county auditor. He leaned in. "They're saying she may have tried to alter more than just the lake boundaries. There's talk she forged signatures to push through a fence ordinance 2 years ago." "Wouldn't surprise me," I said. She'd already been acting like she had unilateral power. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. Burgett entered with her attorney, her expression unreadable, skin pale under the courtroom's harsh lighting. She wore her hair down first time I'd ever seen it that way, and a navy blue blazer that looked like it belonged to someone else. She didn't glance once at the gallery. The prosecution opened with a summary of the charges: falsification of public records, unlawful use of HOA funds, and willful misrepresentation of jurisdictional authority to issue fines and enforce property rules. The Financial Crimes Division had tied her to over $35,000 in unauthorized expenditures, not to mention the forged plat filings and misuse of her position to target specific homeowners. They presented evidence methodically. First came the accountant's breakdown of diverted community funds payments to non-existent vendors, cash withdrawals labeled as meeting expenses with no supporting receipts, and a series of transfers made to an LLC that had never bid on any HOA contracts. Then came the notary testimony. A soft-spoken woman in a gray cardigan took the stand and explained that Burgett had once asked her to notarize a document without her present, saying it was a formality. She refused. Weeks later, she discovered her own stamp had been used on a filing submitted to the city. She'd reported it, but nothing came of it until now. The courtroom shifted when the county auditor testified. He detailed how Burgett had submitted an altered plat map to the recorder's office in a quiet filing on a Friday afternoon, no less designed to go unnoticed. The map redefined 3 private parcels, including mine, as shared access zones, effectively giving the HOA control over slivers of land it had no legal claim to. I was called next. As I took the stand, I focused on the facts. I told them about the notice zip tied to my mailbox, the camera footage, the certified deed I'd obtained from the recorder's office. I explained how Burgett had insisted the land was under her control, even after being shown otherwise, and how the violation notice had been issued without a board vote. The prosecutor held up the printed image of her attaching the notice, the clipboard clutched in her hand like it was some kind of badge. I confirmed it was her. Burgett's attorney tried to rattle me on cross-examination. "You're not an attorney or a surveyor, are you?" "No," I said, "but I can read a deed. And I can tell when someone's handwriting matches a forged signature." He shifted tactics. "Isn't it true you had a long-standing personal conflict with my client?" "No," I answered plainly. "I had a conflict with the way she conducted herself as HOA president." He paused. "You once grilled food on that lakefront and had guests present. That's not allowed under typical HOA guidelines. On HOA property maybe, but this wasn't. That's the entire point." The judge didn't need long. After 2 days of testimony, she ruled that Burgett had knowingly abused her power, falsified filings, and misappropriated community funds. She was found guilty on all counts. The sentencing phase was scheduled for the following week. She didn't look up once during the ruling. Outside the courthouse, I stepped into the sunlight, blinking against the brightness. Jason joined me at the base of the steps, holding a manila envelope. "She's done," he said. "The city's moving to dissolve the HOA in its current form. Full dissolution hearings in 30 days. What happens to the neighborhood? We vote," he said. "Start from scratch, new charter, new bylaws, or no HOA at all. People are leaning toward deregistration. I'd be fine with that." He opened the envelope and handed me a copy of the city's final audit, pages and pages of figures, red flags everywhere. But what caught my eye was the last page, a list of all residents who'd been issued fines under Burgett's unauthorized authority. My name was second from the top. "She's required to pay restitution," Jason said. "Every cent. If she can't, the city's going after her assets." I folded the papers carefully. "That include her house?" "Probably," he said. "They already froze her accounts, and the IRS is sniffing around now too." Back in Willow Creek, the neighborhood felt like it had exhaled for the first time in years. Lawn signs popped up overnight. "Vote for integrity," "No more abuse," and my personal favorite, "HOAs aren't kingdoms." The emergency panel held one last meeting in the community center. This time there were no power suits, no clipboards, no smug declarations. Just folding chairs, coffee from someone's thermos, and a circle of people finally speaking candidly. Linda, the retired postal inspector, stood up and addressed the group. "We all let this happen," she said. "Not because we agreed with her, but because we didn't pay attention. That ends now." A motion passed unanimously. Disband the HOA, return governance to county oversight, and create a voluntary neighborhood association for shared events only. No enforcement, no fines, no power plays. The vote was scheduled for the following Saturday. Ballots were mailed, counted, and verified by a third party. The result was overwhelming 87% in favor of full dissolution. On the day the HOA officially ended, Jason and I stood by the lake. The sign that once read "Willow Creek HOA private access violators will be fined" had been taken down. In its place was a simple wooden post with a brass plaque. "This land belongs to Lot 17. Respect all property lines. Enjoy the view." Kids tossed stones into the water. A couple unpacked a picnic on their own strip of shoreline. For the first time, no one looked over their shoulder, and Bridget. She was sentenced to a year of probation, restitution payments, and community service. Her house was put on the market by court order to cover part of the penalty. She moved out quietly before dawn, her prized hydrangeas left unwatered and wilting in the front yard. The neighborhood didn't collapse without her. It thrived. Without the threat of arbitrary fines or surveillance, people actually began talking again. Shared tool sheds popped up. Neighbors helped repaint fences, not because they had to, but because they wanted the block to look good. The lakefront became a place of laughter instead of conflict. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast orange streaks across the water, I set up my grill again. Not a party, just a few folks, some folding chairs and a cooler of lemonade. No one asked for a permit. No one took notes. And no one tried to claim the land wasn't mine. For the first time in years, Willow Creek felt like a neighborhood again, not a kingdom with a clipboard queen, but a place where people looked out for each other. And this time, we were the ones writing the rules. Together.